What a blessing, musicians. Thank you. Would you take your Bibles with me and turn in them to Leviticus chapter 25? Leviticus chapter 25. And if you'd stand this morning as we read. I decided to lengthen the scripture reading just a bit. I know you love it when I do that. But we're going to read from chapter 25, verse 1 through 23 of chapter 25. Leviticus 25, verse 1. Please follow along as I read. The Lord spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai, saying, "Speak to the people of Israel and say to them, when you come into the land that I give you, the land shall keep a Sabbath to the Lord. For 6 years you shall sow your field, and for 6 years you shall prune your vineyard and gather in its fruits. But in the 7th year there shall be a Sabbath of solemn rest for the land, a Sabbath to the Lord. You shall not sow your field or prune your vineyard. You shall not reap what grows of itself in your harvest, or gather the grapes of your undressed vine. It shall be a year of solemn rest for the land. The Sabbath of the land shall provide food for you, for yourself, for your male and female slaves, and for your hired worker and the sojourner who lives with you, and your cattle, and for the wild animals that are in your land. All its yields shall be for food. You shall count 7 weeks of years, 7 times 7 years, so that the time of the 7 weeks of years shall give you 49 years. Then you shall sound the loud trumpet on the 10th day of the 7th month. On the day of atonement you shall sound the trumpet throughout all your land. And you shall consecrate the 50th year, and proclaim liberty throughout the land to all its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee for you, when each of you shall return to his property, and each of you shall return to his clan. The 50th year shall be a jubilee for you. In it you shall neither sow nor reap what grows of itself, nor gather the grapes from the undressed vines. For it is a jubilee. It shall be holy to you. You may eat the produce of the field. In this year of Jubilee, each of you shall return to his property. And if you make a sale to your neighbor or buy from your neighbor, you shall not wrong one another. You shall pay your neighbor according to the number of years after the Jubilee, and he shall sell you according to the number of years for crops. If the years are many, you shall increase the price, and if the years are few, you shall reduce the price. For it is the number of the crops that he is selling you. You shall not wrong one another, but you shall fear your God, for I am the Lord your God. Therefore you shall do my statutes and keep my rules and perform them. And then you will dwell in the land securely. The land will yield its fruit, and you will eat your fill and dwell in it securely. And if you say, what shall we eat in the 7th year, if we may not sow or gather in our crop? I will command my blessing on you in the 6th year, so that it will produce a crop sufficient for 3 years. When you sow in the 8th year, you will be eating some of the old crop. You shall eat the old until the 9th year, when its crop arrives. The land shall not be sold in perpetuity, for the land is mine, for you are strangers and sojourners with me. May the Lord add his blessing this morning to the reading of his word. You may be seated. I want to ask you a question this morning. I want you to imagine the best wordsmith imaginable. Someone that is so crafty, so eloquent, a great orator of words. And I want you to envision him or her coming to you and as pictographically as possible, taking your biggest concern in life right now, that you're weighed down with, and saying it to you in a way that expresses and evokes your greatest fears, worries, anxieties. The thing that you're most scared of already, and they say it in a way that pulls on every heartstring and every emotion you have, to the point where you're like, yes, that's what I'm facing. This exactly, I couldn't have said it better. You've conjured up every fear that I could possibly attach to this thing that I'm so desperately afraid of. And they did it so perfectly well. And then you said to them, maybe whispered to them, but it's not my problem. Like, they think they've succeeded. They think that they've got you cornered with fear, just dumbfounded and speechless with fear. They think they've got you, but you say back to them, but it's not my problem. And you're free. You're free of it. You're joyful even. You're not hampered with it at all because you are so utterly convinced that it's God's problem, not yours. Like, whatever fear you have that's resting on your shoulders, you are so consistently glad in giving it to God that no matter how great someone could drive that fear into you, you say, but that's not mine to worry about. It's God's. Let me ask you, do you think the people around you would enjoy you being like that? Do you think they'd be so free of you complaining and being just riddled with fear about this, that, and the other, that they'd be like, I like this new version of you, the one that doesn't carry the weight of your greatest fear anymore. I like this version of you so much better. You're so much more fun. I can laugh more freely with you. Like, all of a sudden, you're more interested in my problems than you are your own problem. Like, this is a great 2.0 version of you. Like, that's lovely. Well, that is essentially what the Sabbath year, and we'll talk more about the Jubilee year in the week to come, Lord willing, but that's what the Sabbath year was meant to bring about. It was meant to bring about facing your greatest fears and not letting them shackle you to the ground with fear and anxiety. This is what it's about. And I hope for this sermon, whatever you're facing right now, I know some of you are facing, but I don't know what all of you are facing or all the things you're facing. I hope this sermon attached to the Scriptures frees you from whatever you're facing right now and separates you with the Lord. I want to, let's see, we're almost there. See, when the youth are gone, we're in big trouble technologically. It's like we're just doomed. But they're doing a good job up there. All right. Thanks, guys. Oh, no, that's definitely not the sermon. That's last week's. So it should say resident aliens. But they're working on it, and we'll get there. But here's what I want you to think of now. Okay. If I were to ask you this morning to describe your yoke, you know what a yoke is? Okay? It goes on oxen, on a wilderness trip, there's a yoke inside the canoe that we flip, and it sits right on the bridge of your neck and your shoulders, and you carry it. So a yoke is something that is on you. It's on you. It's a burden that you're carrying. It's a job you're carrying out. And I were to say, hey, I want you, here we go. I think I got a picture of it. If you take me to the next slide, we'll be good. Yeah. This is a picture of a yoke for oxen or the like. If I were to ask you to describe the yoke that you have right now, and I would summarize it as the greatest weight on you right now. So just pause a second. We'll all pause a second. And I want you to think personally, what is the greatest weight on you right now? I could say, what is the greatest burden? What is the greatest workload? What's the mission that's sitting on you right now? The assignment, the people, the job, kids, responsibilities, fears, health concerns. What's the biggest weight on you? And what words would you use to describe that? What words would you use to describe the yoke that's upon you? This is an extremely important question when it comes to the Scriptures, because what you'll find is that the people in the Scriptures that assign great, agonizing words to their yoke tend to behave very badly. Okay? The people who tend to describe their yokes as unbearable, as too hard or too heavy, tend to have really poor endings. Okay? Let me give you some examples of what I mean here. So look at there on the left. You look at Cain. Cain doesn't have his offering accepted. He's cursed by God. And what does he say back to God after he kills Abel? A curse is put on him by the Lord. And what does he say to God? He said, Your judgment on me is what? Too much. It's too heavy. I'm driven from your face, and if anybody sees me, they're going to kill me. So God graciously puts a mark on him to protect him, and then tells him to wander in the wilderness. But that's not enough for Cain either, because he doesn't wander in the wilderness. He actually builds a settlement for himself, a city to protect himself. So again, he thinks God's judgment is what? Too much. It's too strict, it's too severe, it's too heavy. You go on to Lot. Lot has the same thing. God gives Abraham and Lot this spread of land, and Lot thinks the spread of land apart from a city is too much, so he chooses a city. He chooses Sodom. It's got walls, it's got a door, and he doesn't want to live in God's country. He wants to live where there's security in the way that he defines security. So he lives in Sodom. Well, the secure place gets destroyed. Go figure. So that gets destroyed. So God removes him, has to rip him out of Sodom. Angels have to grab his arm and pull him out of Sodom. And as they're taking him back to the hill country, Lot stops them again and says, No. I can't survive in the hill country, where Abraham is surviving just fine, by the way. He says, so give me Zoar. Give me this city to live in. So he wants another city. And the angels permit him to live in a city. And that's not enough for Lot. Then he moves to a cave because he's scared in Zoar. So Lot and Cain are these guys who think the assignment that God's given them is way too harsh, is way too strict, is way too much. It's a burden they're not able to bear, and they focus on that, and they shrink as a result of it. You look at Saul. Saul gets an assignment from Samuel. He says, look, don't offer the sacrifice. You're about to go to war. Don't offer the sacrifice before war until I get there. Don't enter war until I get there. I'll be there. You wait for me to offer the sacrifice. Samuel is late. Saul's looking. All his troops are scattering. They're afraid. The enemy's coming. And Saul says, okay, well, Samuel's not coming, obviously. I'm going to do it myself. And he does it himself. Why? Because the burden was too great. Samuel, what did you expect? Everybody's leaving. I can't just wait until I'm completely slaughtered. Are you crazy? You put too much on me. And so I made the sacrifice. Same thing happens a couple chapters later in 1 Samuel 15. They conquer the Amalekites. They were supposed to annihilate all of them. But his soldiers, the fighting men that in Saul's mind just did all the work, say, let's keep the best and go sacrifice that back home. That would really rally the troops of Israel. When they see us bring the king home and all the best of the animals, it will be so exciting in Jerusalem. It will be a party like we've never experienced. And so Saul feels this weight of all his troops and their excitement and their enthusiasm, and he thinks to himself, they did all this awesome stuff. We're going to take it home. It'll be great. We're still going to kill it all, but we're going to celebrate it back home. And Samuel shows up again. And he says, what's this bleating of sheep that I hear and goats? Didn't God say annihilate all of it? Why is this king's heart still beating? He's supposed to be dead right now. And Saul said, well, the guys, and what is it now? It's the weight of the masses. It's the weight of the people. It's the fear of man that's a burden too great for Saul, and he crumbles. Why? Because the burden was too great. The lot you put on me, God, was too great. And Samuel says, look, Saul, I know that you're small in your own eyes, but you're the king of Israel. You had the right to say, no. God said kill it all right now. That's what he said. That's what I'm doing. With or without you, I'm doing it. Or you'll kill me trying. That's what he should have done. But in Saul's mind, the weight was too great that God had assigned to him. You go to the New Testament, God doles out, the master doles out talents, 5 and 2 and 1. And the one that got 1 says, man, this is risky. I don't want to be risky with what God gave me. God's kind of a scary individual. He's the master. So I'm just going to keep safe what he gave me, and he buries it. Okay? So the burden of going out and seeking to multiply what was, that's way too risky. Things could go wrong. I don't like that prospect, so I'm gonna bury it. And that's what he does. And he's judged for it harshly. God says, if you knew that I was a God that reaped where I didn't sow, why didn't you at least entrust it to the bank? You took no risk at all. You, in your mind, you were so afraid of me that you just sat on it. The burden was too great, and you sat on it. Rich young ruler comes to Jesus. What must I do to inherit eternal life? Jesus turns to the 10 Commandments, and he says, this, and this. And he says, I did that since I was a kid. He said, you lack one thing. Go, sell all your possessions, give the money to the poor, and you come and follow me. And it says the rich young ruler left because his possessions were very great. The burden that Jesus put on him in his mind was too great. That's the deal. And so here's what I want to tell you. Every one of us in this room has a burden on us right now. And if you don't, you will shortly. Okay? And in that moment, the question you have to ask is, am I looking at the burden, or am I looking with stereoscopic vision, double vision, and I'm seeing the burden, and it's huge, but I'm also seeing God. And a result of seeing God this big, the burden instantly starts becoming this big. That's the vision that we're all called to live with. Listen, Paul will say in 2 Corinthians, he says, God took us in a place that brought us to death's doorstep. We literally thought we were going to die. But the reason God did that is so that he could acquaint us with him who raises the dead himself. He brought us to the point of death because in the point of death, we could see him who raises the dead. And so this is the place God delights to bring his children. He loves to show you a burden that truthfully is much greater than you can bear, but not much greater than you can bear with God. And so he shows you himself. But the question is do I have eyes of faith in that moment to not just see the burden looming large, but to actually see God amid the burden. And as we fix our eyes on him, the burden really starts to pale in comparison to who he is. Because that's what you find in the other side of the list. In contrast to each of these guys, you find Abel, Cain, why did Cain keep the best for himself? I mean, the text totally indicates that Abel gave God his best and Cain gave God some of what he had. He didn't give the best. Why would anyone do that? Why would anyone do that? You know, it was funny. I don't know if Nathan's here or not, but Seth, our apprentice, is here, and we ordered him a cordless keyboard and a trackpad thing for his computer, and they came in the mail, and Nathan ordered them for us, and so Nathan leaves them on my desk in Awana, and I see him on Awana, and I see Nathan, and I go, hey, those are Seth's, right? He goes, yeah, you're welcome to trade out the new ones for yours and give Seth your old ones if you want. That was really good. And here's the thing. Why would I do that? You're saying I wouldn't do that, but no. Why would I do that? Because the new ones will, presumably, last longer, work better, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Why do we keep the best stuff for ourselves? Because we think we need to protect ourselves, care for ourselves, insulate ourselves, right? So Cain keeps the best. Why? Because what you'll find on the left side of the list is people that not only saw their burdens great, but were people that were exceptionally controlling people. People that controlled their lives outside of God, that thought they needed to navigate their own life themselves in order for it to work out well. And that's who Cain was. That's why Cain kept the best produce for himself, tells God you've been too strict, and then builds walls around himself. Why? Because he's got to insulate himself. He's got to protect himself. He's got to make sure all his T's are crossed, all his I's are dotted, because Cain is watching out for Cain. Why? Because no one else is. Or so he thinks, right? It's the same with Lot. Why does Lot move from a city to another city to a cave? Because he's watching out for himself. He's covering all of his bases. He sees his lot in life. It's too much for him to bear, so he stays up at night thinking, how can I be safe all the time? That's all he thinks about. He's constantly watching out for himself. Saul's the same way. Saul, God will give Saul later in life a great blessing. They're winning over all their enemies, and Saul says, okay, they're having victory after victory after victory. He says, okay, if anybody eats food, I'm going to kill you. This is a vow before God that none of you can eat food. Why would, as God is granting exceptional victory to Israel, why would Saul put a foolish vow on his men that are winning in the glory of God and take and sap all their strength? Why would he do that? It sounds like maybe righteous in a way, but it's really Saul thinking, I must do something to win. There must be some contribution from me to win. Why? Because Saul is a controller, a manipulator. He sees it all resting on himself, so he thinks it all resides on himself. The lazy servant, it's all on him. But you look at these contrasts, and you look at Abel, and Abel says, God's got my back. Here's my best. Abraham says to Lot, he's been given the gift. He says to Lot, take whichever land you want. I'm fine. Why? Because God is Abraham's portion. God is Abel's portion. Jonathan, as compared to Saul, he's with his armor bearer. He's looking at all these Philistines, and he says, hey, we're going to say something to them, and if they say something back to us, we're going to go up because God's given them into our hand. There's way more Philistines than there are Jonathan and his armor bearer, but he believes that God's for him. His problem is really God's problem, so he's just along for the ride. His eyes are on God, not the prospect of all these Philistines. The 5-talent servant, it says immediately he went out and started trading. He went in the fuel of God. He wasn't afraid. He's just out there doing his thing. Zacchaeus is contrasted to the rich young ruler. Instantly, it says he received Jesus gladly, and then guess what happened with all Zacchaeus' wealth? As soon as he received Jesus, he starts giving away all his wealth. Why? Because all of the guys on the right saw God, all the guys on the left, so because things got screwed up, there's going to be some weird stuff on the screen, but follow along. You'll get it together. All right, look it. On the left, all these people all saw their yoki. I'm just joking. All right. And then all the guys on the right saw God. That's the difference. What's the difference between you, the best version of you that everyone around would greatly enjoy, and the version that everyone wants to just leave and kind of get away from? The left side are people who only focus on the size of the yoke. The right side are people that focus on the size of God. So I've heard one pastor say, stop telling people how big your problems are and start telling your problems how big your God is. That is the essence of all that we face. And this may seem a bit distracted from this concept of the Sabbath, but it's not. I want you to see how God makes this poignantly clear. In Leviticus 25, perhaps the most important verse of everything we read in today's passage is verse 23. The land shall not be sold in perpetuity, for the land is... You're half-hearted about that, see? You're a bunch of yoke bearers and yoke focusers. I'm going to start calling you yokies, okay? Whose land is it? It's God's. So if there's any problems with the land, whose problem is it? You know, I watched this funny thread of this guy talking about the difference between renting an apartment and buying a house. And everyone's like, buying a house is so much better. And of course it is. But he's like, but you don't realize, when you had the apartment, something breaks. It's not your problem. It's no big deal. It's a phone call. It's a phone call. That's all it is, right? Something breaks. It's your problem in your house. You fix it and make it worse, or you pay and have, it's your problem. If it's God's land, it's not your problem. It's His problem. And the people who enjoy the land the most are the people who recognize that. Both, that it's His, it's not mine. I never own this. Israel, commentator after commentator after commentator said, Israel were essential leasers of the land. They were never owners. They were leasers. That's a wonderful thing in this sense. And God is the one who owns it. This is the deal. So in your life, with everything that's weighing you down right now, do you see yourself, this is a key difference, do you see yourself as a manager of it or as a steward? That's the big question. Are you the manager? Does it all rest on you, or does it truthfully all rest on God? And you are just a steward of it. You're just a steward. You're just a navigator. It's not for you to do the hard work of drilling down to find water. No, it's your job to find the fountain of living waters that never stops flowing, and just take the buckets, the reserves, the energy, the source, and take it to the people that need it. That is really your and my calling. Our job is not to drill down deep and find water. God has made it abundantly clear. Jesus in the New Testament, I am the water. Come to me and drink, and you'll find yourself satisfied. So it's not a matter of finding the water. God's made it abundantly clear who's the fountain of living waters. But what it is a matter of is you being a faithful steward of what He's given. But it's not on you. I just told the new members class that as a pastor, I've gone through seasons where I really felt like the growth of the church, or the growth of the people inside the church, was on me. And it's not like I'm immune to that still, but I felt like it. If someone leaves the church, it's something I did, and da-da-da-da. And again, I need to be a faithful, good shepherd of it. But what I've ultimately realized is that you're God's. You're not mine. You're God's. It's my job to be a faithful steward and facilitator and encourager and challenger and rebuker. But the results, it's all on God. It's not in a sense my problem at all. It's my problem to speak a word that needs to be spoken. That's my problem. I need to be faithful to speak truth and to encourage when God lays on my heart to encourage someone, and to build up and nurture faith, disciple where it's needed. It's my job to make appointments where people need to be talked to. That's my job. But when I leave the house, it's not my job. When I hang up the phone or finish writing the letter, it's all God's job. It's just my job to do what He lays on my heart. And it's that with everything you do. Absolutely everything you do. So instead of, at the Little League complex, we have a water pump, we are not water pumpers. We are like just the ones that move the water where it needs to go. That's all we do. And we don't go beyond that, and we don't retract from it. This is the movement. This is the movement. On the left side of that list, those people thought they were the originators, the creators, the one that needed to drive the situation. On the right side, those people understood themselves as just navigators. They followed up where God started. They responded to what God was doing. They understood that He is the vine and we are the branches. That's the concept. I want you to think for a moment about the sabbatical year. So you got 6 years of work, and then you enter into the 7th. And the text is a little bit confusing. You might have been confused as you read it this week or this morning, that He says you're not allowed to harvest the field, but you'll find food from the 6th year. He says that later. But He says you also can eat from field in the 7th year. So it's weird. You're not allowed to harvest it, but you're allowed to eat from it. So what is the difference of that, okay? Well, harvesting is like a process. We've got farmer people in here. It's, the combines, all the schedule, you get it done, you watch the weather, you do all this sort of stuff to harvest rightly, okay? But God says you're free to eat from the field, but it's not like a process. It's just, I'm hungry. I'm just going to go eat, And it's not your fields exclusively. The poor were to eat. Everyone was able to, it was like, one commentator said, Israel during this time, Canaan during this time would be like a public garden. Everyone just go do your thing. Eat as much as you. I like your tomatoes. Those are really what you do. I really like it's all this, whatever grows, you're free to eat of it, okay? Now, I just want you to think for a second. I want you to think of Daniel's scripture reading, and I want you to think, what would that make you like? You just walk around, you don't sow, reap in a technical sense. You just walk around, you just pick and you eat, you're happy, you move on. Can you think of like an animal maybe that would make you like? Like birds? Are you catching the drift? Are you hearing what Jesus says? That it's exactly what Israel was like. Jesus is like, would that you'd be like the birds. That you wouldn't sow, you wouldn't reap, you just get up and you just trust the Lord for your provision. Like right outside our bathroom, we've got a maple tree and it's got a walnut like in the highest thing like stuck in there that some squirrel's having a blast and like, I'm going to store this one way up high for when and he probably knows where it's at and he's just waiting until the time. Like you're like an animal in a good sense that you're relying on the Lord. This is what he says. Look at the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not more valuable, of more value than they? And which of you, by being anxious, can add a single hour to his span of life? This is the idea. So are you weighed down by the stuff that you would describe as your yoke? Or are you free of it because you know that ultimately it's God's problem? Seth's been here 2 weeks now, and it's time to roast him. Don't you agree? I mean, oh, you're so nice. Come on. All right, so check this out. This is great. So last week, this last Wednesday, I wasn't able to teach at council time, so Seth filled in for me. And I won't tell you who sent me this picture because I wasn't here. Her name's Julian Pofu, but she's watching Seth. This is his first council time, and he's introducing himself to the students, and he says, I'm here for Pastor Ben tonight. Can any of you do any of you know my name, or can any of you guess my name? And right as he did that, he clicked the slide of the subject he was teaching on that night, and I want you to look at the screen there. So good, so good. And he didn't do that on purpose. It was just an accident, which makes it way better. I suppose how you look at it. But anyway, and I asked Seth permission to share this, and he said, absolutely, so appreciate you, Seth. But the reason I wanted to share this is because you remember the moment when Jesus says what God's lot for him is to his disciples, that he has to go get crucified and die? And do you remember what Peter says? No, absolutely not. That should never happen. That will never happen. And what does Jesus say to Peter? Get behind me, Satan. That in a moment, any one of us in this room, when we stop trusting God and his plan and his yoke and what he's going to do out of it, who do we become in that moment? Satan. Moment. I was on a board call with Gitchy just this week, and something came up, and we're thinking through this thing, and I was about to say, hey, I think we should do this. And I knew in my heart of hearts that is Ben Lovelady thinking we should do this to secure our bases. We should, no. We should double down. And it was all me thinking. And by the grace of God, God stopped me from saying that because it was totally relying on my initiative and my control and my manipulation. And right after I stopped myself from saying what I was about to say, another board member spoke up and they said, listen, we just have to say that whatever God gives us, it's according to his timing. And we can't do any, we would be fools to try to get something quicker than he gives it to us. It would be an utter disaster. And it was like the Holy Spirit just flooded me with grace for shutting my mouth when I was about to say, no, we can get our finger. It was talking about land and getting more land and this sort of stuff. And I thought, oh, there's a way that we could. And I'm like, no. That's not the way God does. I mean, think of what God does with Israel. He said, I would give you all the land right now, but if I did, the wild animals would cultivate. So they'd outnumber you. It'd be dangerous. So I'm going to give you a little land at a time. Like, that's exactly how God does what he wants. He knows the timing of everything. So we need not manipulate our measures to get what we want our way according to our timing. And I want you to sense that at any second, that's us up there, but in real time. We're actually in the moment when we start thinking about our burden and the way that we're going to fix our burden, we are akin, according to Jesus, to being like Satan. We're actually an adversary to what God is doing, an adversary to it. When you start, man, it's so tragic when you find, and I see it in myself, parents that are so caught up in the well-being of their kids that they actually drive their kids further away. Can you sympathize with that? I can. Man, and I've seen dear friends go through it where they're so concerned. But at some point, man, Jaron, I got to quote you on this. I talked about, boys, and sometimes it's like with boys, when I talk to the boys, it's like two rams locking horns. But when Becky talks to the boys, they hear it in a way that I didn't say it, And Jaron said, that's exactly right. It's exactly right. And he said, there comes a time in a boy's life where you have to let him get the upper hand and let him win sometimes. Let him go his route. And in 6 months' time of letting him win, he'll ask you a question for the first time. And he said, it's just so funny, it works the opposite way with girls, that girls tend to hear their dads. And he's like, it all kind of changes when they turn 21, and then it flips, and then the same sexes start becoming friends again, But that's the thing. It's so tempting to want to meddle and pull up the plant to see if the roots are. It's so tempting. But we have to trust in the Lord. It's his problem. It's his problem. He gave them to us. It's his job to do it. Unless the Lord builds the house, the laborers labor in vain. It's unless the Lord watches over the city, the watchmen watch in vain. This is the movement. And what's the point of this? What's the point? Because here's the idea. Look at the second part. For you are strangers and sojourners with me. Guys, we need to feel this deeply. That everything around us exists ultimately to cultivate an individual relationship between you and God. And out of that individual relationship, it radiates and ripples effect into everything around you. But the most important thing is you and God and the development of that relationship. That is number one. So everything that's happening to you, your eyes are all out here. I got to fix this, and God's like, no. This is all vertical right now. It's all everything that's happening is me and you. It's Peter outside of the boat, locked eyes with Jesus. And when he's walking on Jesus, guess what? He can walk on water. It's a supernatural event. It's unbelievable. And all the disciples are observing this. They're all benefiting from it. But the moment Peter starts looking at the yoke, which is what? The wind and the waves, what happens to him? He instantly starts sinking, and that's not good for him or the disciples, right? So it's all about our relationship with God. And the Sabbath year did that in an object lesson sort of way, for an entire year, you just walked with God. You just lived with God. And you learned that in the next 6 years, it's all Him. And this is why I think, what is the number that best typifies Satan? 6, 6, 6. God's holy, holy, holy. Satan is 6, 6, 6. What's 6 associated with? Work, work, work. Listen, the people that are most distant from God are just those people that are most acquainted with labor. Labor, labor, do, must, get it done. It relies on you. Cover your bases. Watch all your assets. Don't be too generous. You need some for yourself. Don't open your house. Something bad could happen. Like, it's all you. And God's like, free. Yeah, sure, take it. Yeah, whatever, yeah. Because God's our portion. This is the concept. It's all to cultivate a relationship with God. Now, God takes this very seriously because He threatens Israel. He threatens Israel that says, if you don't live like this, I will get my rest in my land. If you want to be a worker, okay, you do that. But it's my land, and I'm gonna rest in it. I'm gonna rest in it, even if that's me taking a nap there by myself. All right, and this is exactly what He says. He says, if you turn away from me, this comes later, the land shall enjoy its Sabbath as long as it lies desolate. While you are in your enemy's land, then the land shall rest and enjoy its Sabbaths. As long as it lies desolate, it shall have rest. The rest that it did not have on your Sabbaths when you were dwelling in it. In other words, if you want to be worker, I'm still going to give my land my rest, and you'll go into another land. That's the significance. So look at exactly what happens in Israel's history. This is the end of 2 Chronicles. It's, in a sense, the end of the Old Testament. It says the king of Babylon took into exile in Babylon those who had escaped from the sword, and they became servants to him and to his sons until the establishment of the kingdom of Persia, to fulfill the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah, until the land had enjoyed its Sabbaths. All the days it lay desolate, it kept Sabbath, to fulfill 70 years. And so you might be asking, why 70 years? The answer is that Israel was in their land a certain amount of years. During that certain amount of years, sometimes they kept the sabbatical year and sometimes they didn't. Would you be curious about the ratios of that time? Of the 819 years since the Exodus out of Egypt into captivity in Babylon, Israel was in the land 819 years. They kept the sabbatical year 329 of those years, 47 times. But 70 times, for a period of 490 years, they did not keep the sabbatical year. And this is why they went into captivity for exactly 70 years. So the land could enjoy its Sabbaths. Why? Why would they do that? Because they looked at the yoke instead of looking at God. And this is why when Jesus comes to the earth, how does he look at Israel? What does he say to them? He says, "O faithless generation, how long am I to be with you? How long am I to bear with you?" You see, Jesus was the one who, you take the best moments of Abel, you take the best moments of Abraham, you take the best moments of Jonathan, you take the very pinnacle moments of all of the people in the Old Testament. And Jesus lived like that every single second. He went from faith to faith to faith to faith to faith to faith to faith. He never winced. He never turned back. Anytime there was a daunting thing before him, he said, "Lord, take this if you can. If not, I want to glorify your name. Your will be done." This is Jesus every moment of the way. But he looks around him. A windstorm came down on the lake, and they were filled with water and were in danger. And they went and woke him and said, "Master, Master, we're perishing." And he woke and rebuked the wind and the raging waves, and they ceased. And there was a calm. And he said to them, "Where is your faith?" This is Jesus. He lived in a world not his own. He was completely separate to the Father. The Father loomed enormously large as he is, and all of Jesus' trials seemed relatively small. Look at what he says. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. See, I think an apt picture for the yoke that I used here this morning is to see yourself in this yoke with Christ. Isn't that when you read the scriptures the way that he intends for us to see it? There's a sense in which, yes, he is the master. Of course he is the master. But there's also a sense in which you look to your right or you look to your left and he's there with us. He is in it with us. He's the one who what? Bore our sorrows, suffered our shame. He's with us in this. And this is the concept of how we're meant to live. There's a really eerie passage in the Old Testament in 2 Kings where Israel is surrounded by Syria, and the way that kingdoms often conquered other kingdoms was thoughtful of their soldiers. They were the bigger, better kingdom, and they would come to another kingdom. It's walled in. They've got watchmen on the towers. They got weaponry. And so the kingdom that's taking over another kingdom would essentially say, well, we don't want to lose soldiers if we don't have to. This place is walled in. They got to get food from afar. And so what we'll do is we'll just starve them out. They'll all become weak. Some of them will die. And we'll just stay there. We won't let any food in, and we'll just wait until they just die off. And this is what Syria is doing to Israel. And they're just sitting there in their tents, eating their food, while all Israel's on their last leg inside the walls. And the prophet Elisha is prophesying during this time. And he says to the king, he says, tomorrow, basically a loaf of bread will be purchased for like a quarter, which is unfathomable. I mean, people are on literally the verge of starvation. They are starving. This is unbelievable. And he says this to the king. Well, next to the king is the king's like master of the guard. It's his right-hand man. It's the guy that the king looks at to get everything done in the kingdom. He's his right. It's like Joseph with Pharaoh. It's the guy. He's in charge of everything. And he's standing there, and he has privileged information to hear Elisha say this to the king. And the master says, could God actually, come on, Elisha, look around. And Elisha responds to him, and he says, because you heard and didn't believe, you will see the time come where the loaf of bread is sold for a quarter, but you won't enjoy it. And sure enough, God wins a miracle on the Syrians outside of the walls, and they flee and they take off, and a couple of lepers, just, they're outside of the city sort of people, they go and they look and they're like, hey, all the tents are empty, what's going on? They go, the whole army fled back home, and they find all this plunder and food in these tents that was there with this abundant provision to out-eat and out-survive those within Jerusalem. And they say, we feel kind of guilty. We're eating all this by ourselves. Let's go tell the city. And sure enough, they go to the city. Well, guess who's standing at the door that's guarding the city? It's the king's right-hand man. They give news, the door's open, and Israel floods out of the city in just mass starvation, hunger. And what happens to the master of the guard? He's trampled to death. So he hears the news, but he's trampled to death as Israel runs out of the city. And you see, friends, I want you to see a couple things as we close. I want you to see first the severity with which God tells you to trust him. That when you are looking at the obstacle, when you're looking at the yoke, the burden, and that's all you see, and you start turning negative and complaining and despairing, I want you to see how God says, that's enough of that. I'm not okay with this. You stop it. It's exactly what he says to him. Elijah says, you're going to see it, but you're not going to enjoy it. That's how serious God takes trusting him. But then the other thing I want you to see is that Jesus is a lot like that master of the guard, in that he's trampled to death as people go and find food. Do you see that? That Jesus is the one who lays down his life, and through him we all enjoy food. So he is both the perfect model of faith, and he's also the sufferer for our unbelief. And the question is have you turned to Jesus as the sufferer for your unbelief and been made whole with God? Have you done that? Have you looked to God through Christ and said, Lord, receive me through your Son Jesus. I want to be all yours. And second of all, are you living like you're all his? And every problem you have is his problem. Because you were bought with a price, and everything you face is up to him. And so we can walk forward in joy and peace and not have anxious bodies and souls and minds and hearts, because it's all his problem. Amen? Musicians, would you please come?